You are listening to the Tricorder Transmissions Special Episode 23. And now, here are Craig and Jeff.
So we're here. It's February 28th, 2015, a day after learning about that Leonard Nimoy died. And Jeff, we're here tonight to really just talk about Leonard Nimoy and what he meant to us and what he meant to our listeners. And we're really just going to pay respects and tribute to this great human being who shared so much of himself with the world. And it's really been a tough past day, because he was such a part of our lives. And he was a part of our lives for, I think, before our lives were even lives. You know what I mean? Like, I've talked about how Star Trek existed in my memory before I had memories. So I think it hit a lot of people really hard, because Leonard Nimoy pretty much embraced everybody as his grandchild.
Yeah, no. Tough subject for me to talk about.
Yeah, well, and I know it's, in terms of Star Trek, I'm the Kirk guy, you're the Spock guy, and you've talked about how inspirational Leonard Nimoy was, or Spock was, in, even leading to, the line of work that you're in.
It's kind of double whammy for me, because I've lost two, and I hate to say I've lost, because these are people that we don't really know in our personal lives, but have had an effect on our personal lives. And over the last year and change, I've lost Robin Williams, who is my favorite actor, and now Leonard Nimoy, whose character that he's most famous for, Spock, had probably the biggest impact on my personal life of any fictional character that I've ever encountered. And like you said, and when I was a very young man, old as I can remember, I'm thinking back to like 4 or 5 years old here, and I remember my uncle showing me these Star Trek episodes on PBS here in New Jersey when I was a very, very young kid. And he used to babysit me when I was very little. My mother worked retail, so my uncle used to take care of me. And he used to sit me down in front of these Star Trek episodes. And, I was a little kid. I didn't really understand what was going on, but I always thought that the Spock character was really cool. And as I grew older, I started to realize, just how incredible that character was. And he really inspired me, through his intelligence, and it always amazed me that he would be able to work with any kind of electronic or computer system that he encountered, and he would use that skill to save people's lives. And I always wanted to get into computers because of that. And when I was very young, I begged my parents to buy me a computer. And I remember getting Texas Instruments, I think it was a 99/44A computer when I was really little, with a cassette drive attached to it. And I learned how to write basic programs at like 6 or 7 years old. And I remember writing these programs that would just write my name on the screen 10 times. And I remember thinking, like, I'm like Spock now. I can use a computer. And, here I am, 35 years later, with a career that's kind of centered around technology. And I think that, I can't say that I owe my entire history to Spock, but I think that my beginnings were definitely because of, or inspired by Spock's character, and how much I was fascinated by what he could do with computer systems.
Yeah, and I don't think your story is unique in the sense that, there are a lot of people that were probably inspired to get into some kind of technology field, based on Spock and Leonard Nimoy's work as the character. He was born on March 26, 1931, and he was an actor, a director, a poet, a singer, and a photographer. So really, a man of the arts.
Yeah.
And even outside of Star Trek, there were things that he did that I sort of was aware of. I think of In Search of, which is a really, really fun show that's kind of time has kind of made it uh, kind of cheesy in the sense that it dealt with a lot of ideas that have either been disproven or, really wild speculation. But his narration really made that show. And another movie that I really, really remember him from and I really remember responding to was the 1970s version of Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and how scary that movie was for me. And that really is my Body Snatchers movie. It's not the one from the 50s. It's that one. And then I also think of like his music and, the Ballad of Bilbo Baggins. And I know we've talked for a long time, and I think we should do it sooner than later about doing our music episode of the Tricorder Transmissions.
We've talked about doing a music episode for a long time, and a lot of the Trek actors had some musical careers, and but one other thing that I wanted to mention about Leonard on a personal level, and I've seen this said, and the outpouring of emotion on social media since yesterday, since we first learned of his passing, has been awe inspiring.
Yeah.
I don't recall seeing this level of posting on Facebook, Twitter, what have you, since I don't even know when. And I think it's a great thing, and I think it's a great tribute to Leonard's life. But one of the things that it made me think about was why or what was the impact on so many people's lives. And I'm thinking to myself, for me it was, the computer thing was a big impact, but another thing that really sticks out to me when I think about the Spock character and how it had an impact on my life was that you look at the character on the Enterprise, and he's the only non-human being on the Enterprise in the original series, the only non-human crew member. And he had his struggles throughout the entire original series. I mean, you've seen many episodes where he struggled, being that outcast, and especially when they some people suspected him of being a Romulan spy, and because he was so similar to the appearance of the Romulans. And I think that for me, when I look at that character and the struggles that he went through, I remember, I was always that nerd or the geek in school, and I always had trouble fitting in. And, I had a lot of tough times through elementary school and through middle school. High school, it kind of lessened up for me. But I remember thinking to myself, I felt like I didn't fit in necessarily, and Spock was, this character could do these things, and why couldn't I do these things as a person? Why was it so important to me to be accepted by everyone else, and over the fact that that I was succeeding, personally? I don't know if it's making any sense, and I apologize, but
You are, and I think that speaks overall to the effect that Star Trek in general has had on the world, because here was this primetime television show that was really made for the geeks or the nerds or the outcasts or the people that were different. And it was on
hmm
primetime TV, and it's coming up on 50 years of history and success, and it really has been a way to empower people, to unite people. I know over on the unofficial Vegas Trek page yesterday, um, it really felt like we were all sharing something,
yeah.
and it really is a special community. And this has been a weird, or a weird death for me, because when DeForest Kelly passed or James Doohan passed, we weren't doing this show. I'm not saying that we weren't connected to Star Trek as much, but
Hmm.
it just wasn't as a part of my life as it is now. I mean, Star Trek is a huge part of my life at this moment, and it's always been a part of my life. But it's really been an emotional day or so. It's really been great that we have all these outlets to communicate with each other and share our feelings and share our thoughts and realize what we've lost.
Oh, ever since we've had this platform, we've been doing this for a little over a year now. I feel a different connection to Star Trek now than I did prior, and And this passing has this has hit me in a different way than prior passings have, and I felt this show has brought us closer to Star Trek, regardless of our prior attachment to the show.
Oh, I agree completely. And it's really going to be difficult moving forward because we were doing a show where we were able to talk about Leonard Nimoy knowing that he was still with us. And
Right.
the next time we sit down to record a commentary track, we're going to be talking about somebody that's no longer with us. And I I think those moments are going to be difficult.
They are, and the next episode that is coming up is Mark of Gideon, and that is a very cool episode for Spock. And I have I was telling you yesterday that I had written up a bunch of notes for this commentary coming up, and a lot of the things that I had written were around how cool Spock was in this episode. And he disobeys direct orders from Starfleet to save Captain Kirk on a hunch.
Yeah.
It was very weird, the timing of everything. And I had been writing up those notes mere hours before those articles hit the internet, and it really it hit me much harder because I had just been writing about how awesome the Spock character was for that episode.
Yeah, and the other thing I think that really made this impactful is Nimoy had sort of retired from the convention circuit, I think back in 2011, but we got to see him in the two new Star Trek movies.
Mm-hmm.
The 2009 one and then Into Darkness.
Right.
And you can say what you want about those two movies, but those two movies now are going to take on a much
Oh yeah,
bigger level of importance
definitely.
for a lot of people because that's the last time that we get to see Spock played by Leonard Nimoy.
Absolutely right. I was just talking about this yesterday with friend of the show Steve, who we've mentioned many, many times. I was just talking to him over Instant Messenger yesterday after we both learned of Leonard's passing, and that was something that he brought up to me, is that now these two prior movies, these two reboot movies, no matter what you think of them, have to take on a different meaning because Leonard is playing Spock
Yeah.
in those movies. This is now, none of the other original series characters are in those movies, only Spock.
Hmm.
And those movies become instantly more precious to us as original series fans because we get to see Leonard reprising that iconic role in those movies.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's it, it's really amazing that he was at a place in his career or in his life where he was willing to do those movies.
Yep.
And he's had a different kind of relationship with Spock over his life and over his career. And I think he finally made peace with what Spock was for him and what it did for his career and how it impacted his life. But he was really at a point where he didn't need to play Spock again. So I almost really think, or I'd like to think, that those movies he was making for us.
I feel like he almost went through the same journey that Shatner did with the his Kirk character, and we all know that Shatner went through a period where he kind of threw a cast off the Star Trek universe and wasn't really happy with the way he was portrayed in the eyes of the fans. Then he came back around, but Leonard went through the same sort of feeling with his books, with the I'm not Spock and then I am Spock. And I feel like he really wanted to give us those brief moments of a reconnection with Spock with the 2009 reboot and the Into Darkness movies. And I really wish that I could say thank you to him for that, because those two movies, no regardless of what you think of them, is really nice to see the way that he portrayed Spock and how true to the character he stayed after
Yeah.
all those years. Because it was the last movie, it was like what, 1990, 1991 was Star Trek 6.
Yeah, maybe 1990 even.
Yeah, it was the last time he played Spock was Star Trek 6, and here he is in 2009 and beyond, and he's still that character. And I'm so glad that we have these recent brief glimpses of Leonard as Spock, those last couple of times, and they're going to have to serve for us, the fans, as our last glimpses of the Spock character.
Yeah, we still will always have all of those great moments that we treasure from his performance as Spock and even things he did outside of Star Trek. And I don't have the tweet in front of me, but his final tweet was almost as perfect a final tweet as you can come up with.
Oh yeah.
Something to the effect of life is like a garden. I should actually pull it up, but it was basically about nothing can ever stay perfect, but on our memories it can be.
Yep. No, it's absolutely true.
And it was really just a, a lot of people don't get an opportunity to make a final statement that is as impactful as they'd like it to be.
Yeah.
And it really is. I don't know what his health was like or how sudden it was. We know he was in the hospital and we were all, keeping him in our thoughts or whatnot. So I don't know what his mindset was when he sent out that tweet, but it really was a wonderful last message to us. And it also made it, I don't want to say sting less, but it made it sting less.
Hmm.
It sort of let us know that it was going to be okay. You know what I mean?
Absolutely right. And I remember yesterday, you had sent me an instant message, and I was actually reading an article about this at the time you sent me the instant message, and I was in a state of removal. I didn't it didn't process for me right away, and as the hours went on after all of these things came in, I went to look at what was his last tweet? When was he? Because I remember I've been following him for a long, long time, and I was like, if something in my mind said, "What was the last time he tweeted?" And I looked, and it was like 4 days prior, and that's when that tweet came up, and I said, "Wow, the tweet is so perfect," and the way that he put that line, that life is like a garden, and it can't be perfect all the time, but you can remember it when it was great and when it
Hmm.
was a good thing. And when we look back at our own lives, I know that we're in our 40s, you and me, and we look back and you think of great times and we think of bad times, and the good times stay good because we remember them that way.
Yeah.
And it's how we choose to look at things. It's how we choose to look at the past. And when we look at Leonard's life, I think you and I both, and all other Trek fans, are going to look at all of these great things that Leonard gave us, and all
Hmm.
of these great moments that he experienced as a Spock character, that we lived vicariously through him. And what a great way to be remembered. What a great way to leave an impact on the lives of millions of fans out there that have watched you portray this character. And what greater gift to give to us than all of these positive messages over the years. And we can continue to go back and watch these moments over and over. And last night I had posted on Facebook that I was watching Star Trek 6 because I couldn't possibly bear to watch Wrath of Khan.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at my Star Trek movies. I'm thinking to myself, what can I watch tonight that really showcases Leonard, but doesn't make me feel this again?
Hmm.
And I was thinking, you know what, Star Trek 6 is a great choice because he's incredible in it, and he's in this triumphant role where he's like a CSI guy. He's like figuring
Yeah.
out what went wrong on the ship, and he's rescuing Kirk and McCoy at the same time. It's like this is quintessential Spock.
Yeah.
I said, this is the Spock that I love, and I'm so glad that I get to sit down and watch him portray this character over and over and over again. And I hope that everybody out there in our sorrow is able to really embrace the greatness that he was and the what he's left for us.
Really well said, Jeff. And we actually reached out to the listeners,
Mm.
and said if they wanted to share their thoughts with us, to post them, and we would share them on this episode. So, do you want to go ahead and run through those, Jeff?
Absolutely. So we've got a few responses here. The first one that I want to grab is the comment from our co-host of another podcast that we do. I don't know how many of you out there who listen to this show know that Craig and I are part of several other podcasts too, and one of them is called the Slycast. Is this kind of a celebration of Sylvester Stallone's movie career, and we have a third host on that show with us for every episode, and he's been a great contributor, and we're very privileged to have him with us. And his name is Jeff Ferry.
Yeah, and actually, he was on an early Tricorder Transmissions
Oh
episode,
yeah, he
wasn't he?
was on our Arena
Yeah,
extended discussion episode talking about the Gorn.
way back. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh God, this was a long time ago. And then
Hmm.
this that actually predates
Yeah.
our Slycast show. But Jeff has been pretty close with us for a long time now, and he was amongst the first to respond to our call for fan input. And he says that I think the next time I watch Wrath of Khan is going to be tough. We always had a very clear view of the Spock character, and he fought to keep true to it. That meaning Leonard. He always fought to keep true to it, and his portrayal of the character shaped how the subsequent Vulcans were portrayed and how Star Trek handled all non-human members of Starfleet. Now, something that last line I think really resonates with me. His portrayal, Leonard's portrayal of the Spock character, shaped all subsequent Vulcans.
Hmm.
And that is absolutely 100% true. His portrayal of Spock was not limited to the original series, the next gen,
Hmm.
the movies, Voyager. I mean, he how much of Spock do you see in Tuvok?
I was just going to say that if you watch Voyager, Tuvok, as great as Tim Russ
Yep.
did as Tuvok, you don't have that performance without Leonard Nimoy's work.
Not at all. And not only that, but look at Jolene Blaylock in Enterprise.
Hmm.
100% based on Spock. I mean, not that she's not a wonderful actress and the writing wasn't good, but still, all of those subsequent Vulcan performances were based on Spock, and even Sarek
Yeah.
was based on or Leonard's portrayal of Spock, and he is the quintessential Vulcan. He's the genesis of Vulcans.
Yeah. Yeah.
So great observation by Jeff Ferry. Thanks for bringing that up, man. And that is a wonderful remembrance of Leonard, and a great point that I don't think either one of us had thought of.
No, not at all. Moving along, Neil Carpenter wrote, "One of my biggest regrets is that I never met him in person. The irony of his death, famous for playing a character who represses his emotions, causing so many people to express theirs today, is truly touching." And that's a wonderful message, and thank you for sharing that, Neil.
Oh, excellent. And my Facebook page has been absolutely full of it. And
Yeah.
one of our most fervent listeners over the last months and year that we've been doing this show was the next person to comment, and Matt Walsky, who Matt has been an incredible source of feedback for this show for a long time. And Matt, we really appreciate you listening to the show and lending your words on our Facebook page for so long and so often. And his comment, and this is amazing. He says Shatner may have been the star, but Nimoy was the symbol. That is incredible, an incredible line. And wow, I want to talk about that with you in a minute after I get done reading the rest of his input. He also says, I was lucky enough to meet him in 2009 and had a photo with him. Our first ever convention, and we got to meet Leonard. And good on you, mate. I wish that Craig and I were there with you.
Yeah.
It was for all of 10 seconds. We can relate. But I can still remember him smiling warmly as I walked up to him, shook hands, and then had the picture. I remember wishing him well, and my wife was so overcome at seeing him, she was in tears on 2 occasions. To quote a famous surgeon, who was also sadly missed, he's really not dead as long as we remember him. And that is a line from the end of Star Trek 2. And thank you, Matt, for bringing that up, and thank you for sharing your experiences with Leonard with us. And that first line really resonates with me. And then, Shatner, I'll repeat it again, Shatner may have been the star, but Nimoy was the symbol.
Yeah.
And wow, that
Yeah.
resonates with me big time.
Yeah, and it's not something I have ever really thought about, and it's an incredible observation. I mean, if you look at these global pop culture icons, Superman or Batman or
Hmm.
Zorro or Spider-Man,
Yep.
they're all identifiable. And I think for Star Trek, it really would be Spock.
I won't debate you on how fantastic a character Kirk was, and I absolutely adore Kirk and I love Shatner. But when you look back at the original series, the standout symbol has got to be Spock.
Yeah, I mean, he was one of the important spices that is this, the soup that is Star Trek.
Hmm.
Every ingredient's important, but some of the spices are really, really important. So, yeah, just a really, really great memory there, Matt. And I'm glad you got to meet him. And unfortunately, that's something that we never got. So, like Jeff said, good on you, mate.
Yeah.
Um, Next, I want to cover Ken Mills' note, and I just got to say that we work with Ken on Zilch, the Monkeys podcast, and I also work with Ken on the Podkist. And
Hmm.
Kiss is a much like Star Trek, something that's been a part of my life for a long time. And Ken was even on our show on, I think, two occasions. He was on our Mirror Mirror episode, and he was on our A Piece of the Action
Yep.
episode. So Ken reached out to me yesterday and just told me anything we needed. He was there for us,
Yep.
and I really want to thank Ken for that, because as a fellow podcaster, I think Ken understands what we sort of go through to put these shows together,
Yep.
and the amount of work that we put in behind the scenes. I can't believe
No,
this. I'm getting emotional. Um,
no, man. No, you're absolutely right, man. Listen, Ken's a wonderful human being, and I know that all of our listeners don't know Ken personally, but Ken Mills is a great, great guy. He's very, very caring. He's really embraced the two of us. Ever since he's been on our show, and he graciously offered to do a the monkey show with the two of us, and include us, as true co-hosts. And Ken, I'm sure that you're gonna listen to this, and you're a wonderful, wonderful guy, and we really, really appreciate you being on our show, and having us on your show, and all of your support that you've offered to us, in Leonard's passing, because that you know how much we're going to be affected by it. And Ken has been doing the podcast show, which is a podcast about the band Kiss, for many, many years now. And that if a member of Kiss had passed on, he would probably be just as emotional as we are right now about Leonard's passing, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I think this one touched him. I mean, he wrote hashtag LLAP.
Yep.
Celebrity deaths rarely mean much to me. I never met Leonard, but his portrayal of Spock meant so much to me. In fact, I wish I could be like him. The world and the galaxy is out a great man.
Yep. There's been so many emotional outpourings that I've read, that I've gotten really misty-eyed about, and it's tough not to. It's really tough not to. And Ken, that was a fantastic, fantastic tribute. And obviously you can tell by our reactions to what you said that it really hit home.
Yeah, and thank you for that, for reaching out to us yesterday, Ken. And it really helps show how connected we are here in this community.
Absolutely. And the not only the Star Trek community, but the podcasting community. and
Yeah,
and yeah, I don't want to hammer it into people's heads that these things take work to do, but podcasts are a labor of love, and it is through our love of Star Trek that we are able to produce these shows.
Yeah.
every single week, and Ken really understands that because he's been doing the same thing, and it's been such a difficult day knowing that Leonard is gone. And we've not only been celebrating Star Trek, the original series, but we've been celebrating Leonard's work and his the work that he's most remembered for. The show lasted 3 seasons, but his work so far transcended those 3 years, and his portrayal of that character has elicited such a response from. I was watching earlier today. There was a local newscast here in New Jersey. It was on the NBC station, and Lester Holt, who is the replacement for Brian Williams, Lester Holt was read a brief excerpt and had a little report on the life of Leonard Nimoy. And I sat down, and I knew it was coming up, so I DVR'd that news broadcast to make sure that I didn't miss it. And it was very short, but it was, wow, it was great to see Leonard's work mentioned on the daily news.
Yeah, I mean, if you really think about it, you go back 50 years and look at all the shows that were on TV 50 years ago, and a lot of those shows might be known, people are aware of them, people remember them,
Sure.
but it's really, really rare for something to continue to have an impact that many years later. And Star Trek is one of those things.
Yep.
And it really speaks volumes about the quality of work that everybody did on that show.
Mm-hmm.
So we have one last note from Ian Murray.
Yep.
And Ian is another listener that reached out on IM yesterday. On Messenger, he hit me up and we talked a little bit. And I want to thank you, Ian, for that. It was good hearing from people yesterday. And
Yeah, it was.
he wrote, we lost one of the greats today. Our favorite Vulcan, Leonard Nimoy, has passed on, and we feel a loss we can't describe. I truly believe Spock is the greatest character ever created for television. He was beyond cool. He was the Fonz of the 60s. I had a chance to meet Leonard at a poetry convention in the US around 1989, but the funds didn't allow me to travel. I should have gone to the bank and got a loan. I'd become a serious Trekkie at that point. Rest well, old friend. You led a rich life, making countless millions happy. You will not be forgotten. Your legend will only grow through the generations. Live long and prosper.
Wow.
All my hopes, Ian.
Fantastic.
And as we talk about poetry, I want to read one of his poems.
Oh, great.
Right now, called A Silence with You. And it's a short poem, and it reads, A silence with you is not a silence, but a moment rich with peace. Just some really beautiful words there. And his poetry is something I've just started to read, and it's really some beautiful work. And he has another one here called If Love Can Be, and it reads, If love can be withdrawn, it never was. My love for you is not a gift to you, it is a gift to me.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great. It's wonderful. We know that Leonard played Mr. Spock, and we know that he had a musical career during and after Star Trek, but I love the fact that we have these wonderful poems that give us such insight into Leonard as a person, as opposed to the character of Spock, which we usually perceive him as. But he was a human being. These poems are great encapsulation of that.
Yeah, and I have one that I'd like to end the show with whenever we do end.
Oh, great. Well, I have, if you wouldn't mind, if you wouldn't, it would indulge me. I have one thing that I would like to bring up.
Go for it.
And, I've said on this show in the past that my favorite episode of the original series is Devil in the Dark. And when I think about Leonard and Spock, that episode becomes even more a favorite of mine, because one of the moments that really resonates with me about that particular episode is that there's a moment where Kirk and Spock are separated, and Kirk is in communication with Spock, and he tells Spock that he's in the proximity of the monster or the Horda, and when Spock hears that news, his whole demeanor changes, and you can feel, you see this logical, almost emotionless character. You can feel the human side come through, and he completely changes his tone to being concerned with the welfare of his friend. And I love the fact that this Spock character can be that dynamic in such a rigid definition. He's supposed to be this cold, emotionless character who's ruled by logic, but because he has this is half human side, you're allowed to see these wonderful glimpses of his deep caring for his fellow crew members and his best friend, uh, Captain Kirk. And when he feels that Kirk is in imminent danger of losing his own life, that he he can put aside that logical cold side and show this caring. It's a great moment in that episode, and it's one of the reasons why it's my favorite original series episode. And I have a whole bunch more that I could talk about, but I think that we're going to be doing yet another tribute to Leonard later on,
Yeah.
and I want to save some of my other observations until then. But that's something that really stands out to me, and it's I wanted to just mention that was one of the reasons why it is my favorite. The fact that Leonard, as Spock, can outpour these emotions that transcend his own character's definition, and it serves as a great reminder of how we can all be more than what people think we are.
Yeah, it's a great observation, and I think we all have moments like that, and moments from the series that touch us in different ways, and that's what makes this series great. We've talked about what's made this series great before, and we're able now to sort of talk about why Spock was so great, and we've talked about that before, but tonight we were sort of forced to really drill down into that and explore that and celebrate it. And I really want to express how much our show means to me, Jeff, the Tricorder transmissions. And we talked earlier about the appreciation that it's given us, but this is something I look forward to every week. And it's become a huge part of my life. And I'm glad we're doing this.
It to me, this is incredible that we're able to sit down every week
Yeah.
and talk about this stuff, and have other people listen in and talk back to us. And I think that, looking back on my own life, this is one of the things that really is a great, wonderful thing, and I'm so proud of what we've done, and I'm proud of what we continue to do. And
Yeah.
this is one of the moments where it becomes difficult because some a man that we talk about every single week is no longer with us. And I know that neither one of us have a personal connection with him in the real world, but still, I know that people may have a hard time understanding a connection between a celebrity and a fan, but as a celebrity who has had an impact on my personal life, this has been a difficult thing to take in, and a difficult thing to process. And I wish that I could have thanked him face to face, but I never had that chance, and it's something that I will regret.
Yeah. But at least we have been able to share our thoughts and pay tribute over the course of this show and over the course of
Yeah.
our discussion tonight. So I'm not sure if there's anything else you want to talk.
Yeah, I think that I have a couple other things that I could mention, but I know that we are going to be reaching out to some of our regular contributors to this show, and looking for some input from them. So I think that this will not be our only tribute to Leonard Nimoy. I think there will be possibly some more material maybe in the weeks to come. and as we hear
Yeah.
more from our regular our show compatriots, and I'm gonna save some of my other thoughts until those other episodes come to pass. And but I think that we, Craig and I, will wanted to get this episode out, and I apologize to our listeners if this episode has felt a little disjointed and unplanned, because this is really this is me and
Yeah.
Craig as we really are.
Yeah. We just turned on the mics and went for it. So we will be back next Sunday with a regular commentary episode, and we'll hopefully be back to our normal cheery selves. I can't say that this series moving forward won't hit the odd emotional moment here and then, because the series, as I view it, is
Mhm.
going to change for me now, and I think it's going to
Absolutely.
change for a lot of people. So but we are so close to finishing season 3 at this point, and we still have a lot more planned to do, and I look forward
Me too.
to doing that. So I guess before we leave, I want to read
Okay.
one last poem called "I May Not Be," and it reads: "I may not be the fastest, I may not be the tallest or the strongest, I may not be the best or the brightest, but one thing I can do better than anyone else, that
Wow.
is to be me."
That's good. That's great. Yeah. Now I'm getting kind of choked up myself.
So thanks, Leonard, for all the years of entertainment you gave us and the lessons you taught us, and helping make us feel like we all belong
Absolutely.
together on this
Yeah.
planet.
I couldn't have said it much better than that. And thank you, Leonard, for giving us the Spock character as you envision him, and thank you for encouraging myself and so many other people to pursue our lives, dreams, and getting into technology. And I think that your portrayal of that character not only encouraged people to strive for more for themselves, and pursue greater things. I think it also really spoke a lot to people who were looking to be accepted and understand that other people's perception of you doesn't define you, Tim. And I think that's a wonderful, wonderful message, and it's a very self-affirming message in a time where we're taught to rely on what other people think of us to define our sense of self. And um, thank you for that. And I don't know what more to say, but I wish that he could hear me say thank you.
Yeah, you said it perfectly, Jeff.
But yeah, thank you for everybody who's listened to the show, and thank you to everybody who has contributed to this, and thank you to the guys who've contributed offline. We have some regular listeners who we talk to on a regular basis who don't post on our Facebook, but IM us directly, and
Mhm.
uh, thank you to all of them as well. And this is a very difficult time, I think, for all Star Trek fans out there, and you know, I'm glad that we're all here to support each other.
Yeah, just remember that we're all here together, and you're never truly alone.
Yep. Yeah, that's true. That's true. We'll be back on Wednesday with our "What Are Little Songs Made Of" episode number 6. And thank you for forgiving us for not having a regular commentary up this week. It would have been very difficult to record that,
Yeah.
and we'll be back next Sunday with with that regular episode.
Space, the final frontier. These are the continuing voyages of the starship Enterprise. Her ongoing mission: to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life forms and new civilizations, to boldly go where no man has gone before.